You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, we're going over to the West Coast of America to be joined by Mario Martinez, the founder and CEO of Vengreso. Mario, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rian. I appreciate you bringing me on, and I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, chuffed to have you. Well, look, typical fashion with this show, kind of focus on three kind of main areas: early influences, challenges, and pivotal moments. So with the early influences, I believe you grew up in California, and if I'm correct with that, are there any standout favorite memories from your early days there?
I'm born and raised native Californian. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Never left home. Went out to UC Berkeley, which is Cal, and became a Bear. And that was actually a big moment for me because growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of money. In fact, you may have heard this once before on one of my podcasts, but we had so little money that when I went to apply to colleges, each application was anywhere between $40 and $60 per application to apply. And I only had $41 that I could use towards a college application. So I applied to my dream school, and that was Berkeley. And that was it was all or nothing. So I just basically applied and said, I'm in, or I'm going to massage therapy school. And somehow I got in. And you asked about a pivotal moment. There actually was one. And it is a defining moment in my life that created a insatiable perspective and attitude and just aggressive focus on proving my worth. So the story goes, after I applied, UC Berkeley usually waits a few months before they let everybody know. And if you look at all the University of California systems, all of the, I think it's 9 now or 10 UC systems usually send their notifications of acceptance or denial sometime between February and the latest mid-March. Well, UC Berkeley is notoriously known for always being the last one to send it out. So usually you don't get it until somewhere around mid-March. So around the mid-March timeframe, I ended up getting my acceptance letter, and I just was so elated. And next day, we all went in to school. And I remember everybody was talking about where they got accepted to, because that was the final one. Everybody was waiting for that. And we were in a class of one of our AP classes. We call it advanced placement classes. And one of the individuals there in the class, I know his name. I know exactly what he looks like. I know exactly what he said. He found out that I actually got into UC Berkeley and he did not. And he was pretty miffed about it, namely because on my what they call SAT scores, I'd gotten a 990 out of the 1600. Now that was my third try, and I'm just a horrible tester. But all around, I was a 3.96 GPA, football player, varsity player, leadership, every single club you can imagine, both academic as well as sports. So I would say I was a pretty well-rounded individual. And I did that by design because I knew I wasn't a very good test taker for no other reason other than I just choked up on big, long tests. With that said, he said to me in front of everyone, well, the only reason why you got into UC Berkeley was because of affirmative action. Now, back then, affirmative action was focused on trying to get underprivileged individuals, those with ethnic minority and backgrounds, into schools, because predominantly it was both Asian and Caucasian individuals that were being accepted as the largest majority of individuals being accepted into those schools. And when he said that to me, 30 plus people just like stopped. And it's one of those things that you say you may think about somebody, but you don't say that, that they got in because of the color of their skin. And when he said that, I just looked at him and I said, man, well, here's the only thing that I know for sure. I got in and you didn't. And he may have been right. Maybe I did get in as a result of affirmative action. Who knows? And if I did, awesome, hallelujah. But it was that moment in time, that moment that said to me, when I said what I said, I turned around and walked away, and the whole class was like, dang, oh, like, it was like one of those things in kids in high school where, basically it was roasted him back, if you would, for operative word. And, he had nothing to say. I mean, what could you say? I mean, that was like, it was foolish. But I walked away, and it was that moment that I said, my dad was right. No matter what I get in terms of life and opportunity, I have to prove that I deserved that opportunity.
Nice.
And so that pretty much was a pivotal moment in life that has carried me all the way through to this very day. When given an opportunity, my perspective is I need to prove that I was given that opportunity for a reason.
There's one or two more over the next 20, 30 minutes that I want to talk about or bring up through my research. But before we get to that, you've touched on your father. Who do you think, sticking with the early days, inspired you or had the biggest impact on you when you were growing up?
Without a doubt. Yeah. So, my dad, who was a truck driver, and we grew up as a poor Mexican family. And one of the things he used to say to me is, son, mijo, he used to say, which is Spanish for son. I don't care what you want to be. You could be a truck driver. It makes a good living. I raised a family of 5, or a family of 7, actually 5 kids, and, mom and dad. And you could be a truck driver. You could be a garbage collector. You could be a doctor. You could be a lawyer. I don't care what it is that you want to be. Whatever you choose to be, just be the best at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just be the best. Now, that created also a very competitive spirit in me that I oftentimes have to taper back. Oftentimes people don't even know they're competing against me because I'm competing against them, right? In my own mind. And that in itself has its own set of problems that it can create, right? So I oftentimes have to throttle that back somehow, some way. But that messaging instilled inside of me that no matter what I was going to do, just be the best at it, and always prove that the reason why someone or somehow you were given that opportunity, that you deserved that opportunity. So that definitely, my dad was an individual who influenced that thinking for sure.
Sounds like you were raised by a great father, but also, having spoken to a couple of people who've gotten to know you over the years, you've built your business around your family, really, and you are an incredible father as well, according to others. I know you've got 2 young boys of your own. There's a quote that I've seen you reference a couple of times, and I'd like to know what's your interpretation or meaning, or how do you interpret this quote? And the quote is, the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind.
Yeah, well, that's a first off, it's a great quote. And yes, I have referenced it a number of times. That was one of the things that, growing up and all throughout early adulthood, it was, the fear of trying new things because you're going to fear failing. And if you think about that particular quote, the most expensive thing the best thing you can do for yourself is actually have an open mind. So whenever something comes at you, whether it's work or life related, the key to anything in general is be open to accepting and to trying it. Before you knock it, try it. Before you say you don't like it, try it. Before you say you can't actually win or you can't actually do, try it. And that's really what the premise of that quote is based on. And for myself personally, when I started my company, I had never been a business owner before. And I had never done anything like this ever in my life. I'd always been inside of corporate. And so when the opportunity presented itself to do this, I figured, well, why not? Let me see if I can actually make a run at this and be successful at making that happen. So I ran with it, and that was back in 2016, so 6 years ago, and 5 years ago, excuse me. So fast forward, now here we are, and I haven't looked back. So that's been an interesting and fun ride. And certainly I never planned on being here. This was not in my my deck of cards, if you would, to be a business owner. What I did have in my deck of cards that I put, and I always built a personal plan, and it was essentially my my whiteboard on an annual basis, and inside there had a career section, and I had two paths. I actually can see the slide right now. On one half, it was a speaker, and on the other half, it was to sit in the C-suite. And I always planned on it being in the corporate environment, in the C-suite, and being a speaker over here was being a motivational keynote speaker. So funny as it may be, I'm actually now both, but with a twist. I do speak generally not on motivational techniques; it's on sales, and all over the world. And now on the right side, I am the CEO, but of a small business, not of a big, large corporate organization.
Well, there you go. You've referenced at the very beginning of this podcast that born and raised in California, but you have left a couple of times because you've traveled a lot of the world. You've been to places like the islands of Tahiti, South Africa, South Korea, Thailand. I'm sure you've been to many others. These are just some of the places I found that you've been to. And I've referenced that you're a father. Potentially, I don't know if you are or not, a dog owner. But with all that said, what's one thing that you're into or curious about that not a lot of people would know about you?
Oh boy, I'm such an open book. As you see, you've combed through my social media, and I forgot about some of those places. Yeah, I have been to all of them. I do have two boys, 10, soon to be 11, and 7. What is something someone doesn't know about me? Jeez, what could I say?
Or even like your favorite favorite country you've eaten food in, favorite country that you've been in, that explored somewhere that blew you away.
Well, first off, the favorite place I've ever been to, and the most beautiful place I've ever been to, without a doubt, hands down, by a mile, Tahiti. That is the most beautiful place on earth that I've ever been to, and I would absolutely go there again. It is just stunning, absolutely stunning. So that I can answer. What other people may not know about me is potentially that I was previously married for 8 years and then divorced. And I married very early on at the age of 21, and was married in that scenario. My ex-wife left, and that was because we separated as a result of her hanging out with my best friend.
Ouch. Ouch. I've heard that story 2 or 3 times from people, not of you, but others. It's happened to others as well, and nasty.
Yeah. So, I mean, it happened. I guess it happened, and I actually was in a very good spot. So I married my wife that I've been married to now almost 13 years. Congrats. And we've got 2 amazing boys, the age of almost 11 and 7. And we just have a blast. I have a blast with them. I love my boys, and I love hanging out with them. And we're pretty tight. So tight that they like to be called matching bros. So we have to try to go out and find clothes that match each other. And we all walk around. And in fact, we were in Hawaii just this past a month ago. And one day they came up with this crazy idea that we had to walk around with mohawks. So I structured our hair and made them all mohawks, including myself. And I hear a grown man, 45 years old, walking around with the mohawk. So
some things you have to do as a dad, I guess. But
yeah,
it's easy.
Exactly.
It's easy to see looking at your socials that you're a huge fan of your 2 sons, and they obviously mean a lot to you. Going back to business for a moment, I know you started your professional career in sales, worked your way up to become sales manager, companies like Sprint, eSolutions, eventually VP at a PGI, I believe, before you started your own venture. But before that, you've said on a previous podcast, you worked at a camera store, and it was a guy called, I believe his name was Hunter, who got you into sales, started the camera store at 16, 17 or 18, you got into sales, as you're one of the top salespeople without even knowing it. So my question is not for you to tell the story. Do that if you wish. It's what were you doing unknowingly that other people weren't doing that had you as, probably their top asset in that company?
So I'll bring you to the very point in time that Hunter explained to me what I was doing, and I didn't even realize it. So I was a photo finisher, meaning I was the guy sitting at the big giant, 6-foot long machine, pressing red, magenta, cyan, and printing out people's 35 millimeter photos.
My brother was doing that yesterday, strangely enough, and I know you probably haven't heard that in about a decade, but he had a
Exactly.
104-year-old camera from my great grandfather and was had put some new thing in it and then took a pictures and was getting developed. But strange, I just thought I'd say it because it's probably been about a decade.
Yeah, a little bit more than a decade. Even I'm not even sure if you can find those machines around anymore, to be honest with you. Most of us have thrown out those cameras and gone pure digital. So I actually was a photo finisher, and I applied to transfer over to Berkeley to go to UC Berkeley as a photo finisher. And he came in and he told me that he denied the request. And I practically, my heart just fell to the floor. And I just thought, oh my God, I need this job. I need to be able to pay my way through college. I don't have a job. And so he said, I can't support that. And then he decided to pull out the stats, and the stats essentially showed that as a photo finisher, I was actually leading in first, second, or third place, the region, for almost a whole year in sales. And he asked me, did you know that? And I was like, well, no, not really. And he's like, well, you must have seen like extra bonus things. And I was like, yeah, I just thought I would get, extra, commissions for this, commissions for that, those types of things. And he said, well, walk me through, what are you doing? And the story actually goes with, when we used to print people's pictures, we used to take the pictures and open the box and then show the first couple pictures and say, hey, are these yours? To make sure that we're giving the right pictures to the individual. And so what I used to do is I used to take those pictures, and when you go through them, you have to look at every single picture to make sure that they were printed right, the right color, the right shading, the right, et cetera, lighting. And I would grab all the bad pictures that could potentially be fixed as a result of having a potentially different camera. So I pull those out, put those to the top, and I would say, hey, are these your pictures? And inevitably, as soon as someone saw the first picture, they'd be like, oh, that picture didn't come out. And I'd be like, yeah, it didn't come out. I just, so these are obviously yours. And they said, yeah. They're like, what happened? And I said, well, it's your camera. What camera are you using? And they would say, well, I'm using this camera. And I'm like, oh, well, if you're taking pictures of your son running in soccer, then, that camera is not quick enough in terms of its shutter speed to be able to create the picture that you want. And then inevitably, what do you think somebody would ask?
Well, where can I get that camera?
Exactly. Well, where's that camera? Like, what camera is that? And so I would say, oh, well, I would recommend this one or this one. And they would say, well, which one is the better of the two? And I said, well, are you planning on doing this for the rest of your life? Or, how long do you want to be doing soccer pictures? And they're like, I'm going to be in sports forever. This is just an example. And so I would say, well, I would probably go with this camera, and I would probably add on this particular lens. And this lens is going to help you do, X, Y, and Z. And then what you really want to make sure is you've got the right speed for film. And this is the film that you would want. And they would say, okay, well, how much is that? And I would say, well, X dollars. And they would say, oh my gosh. And I'm like, but yeah, if it's worth it to you, I mean, like your reaction to this picture was essentially, you were disappointed. So, you got to make a decision of, do you want to keep getting disappointing pictures, or would you rather have a camera that's going to help you capture the moments that you really want? And inevitably they would say, okay, I'll get that. Or they would think about it and come back and they would get the camera.
Yeah.
So I would just be ringing up, equipment without even realizing it. So I told Hunter this story. And as he pulls it out of me, like, what are you doing? And so finally I get to, this is what I'm doing. And then he just keep going. And then what would they say? And then what would you do? And then how would you? And I'm just telling him. And so he goes, so basically what you're telling me is all you're doing is helping a customer. And I stopped and I was like, yeah, I guess if you think of it that way. He's like, that's all you're doing. And he goes, and that's exactly what sales is all about. Sales is helping. And so now one of my cardinal sayings, of course, is, and you probably saw this in the Salesforce documentary movie that they produced about sales.
Yes.
And I was privileged.
That's a big achievement.
Yeah, I was privileged to be one of those 20 influencers that they brought in. to be part of that movie. And my signature line inside that movie that I was also privileged to have Benioff introduce my video at the sales keynote 2 years ago at Dreamforce, and it says inside there, "Sales is the art of helping."
How
And
did
that's
that
essentially
feel?
what I did, and that's it. That was as simple as that. It came from that. And as if you think about, what our role is as salespeople, sales leaders, our job is to figure out how we can help our buyers achieve their goal and their mission. Whatever that goal is, whatever that mission is to be
Yeah,
able to help in that regard.
exactly. How did that feel having Mark Benioff introduce you?
Well, the funny part is I didn't even know. So I'm actually at Dreamforce, and I don't know where I was at. I was with a group of people, and then all of a sudden I start getting text messages from like 15 different people. Dude, I'm over here at Dreamforce Sales Cloud, and you're in the video that Mark just introduced. Like, it was my section, my segment of video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, it was so fast and I couldn't even record it. But then I heard your name, and people that I had not spoken to, that I had worked with in past lives, how were actually texting me and be like, dude, I can't believe it, you're up on stage right now. So that was so how did it feel? I wasn't really there to be able to capture the moment, but it was kind of cool to be able to get those messages.
Too popular to even be there.
I wouldn't say that, but
you've got a very good brand internationally, actually, even over here in Ireland and the UK. You're well known. You're in the charts a lot. And with that, one of the things I wanted to touch on was that the story of sales, the Salesforce documentary. And I guess my question is, what are some of the things, or what are things people spend way too much time on when trying to build a brand that you see?
I think when individuals, whether you're an entrepreneur or trying to be an influencer of some sort, or you have this goal and idea to be a brand, if you would, they spend too much time on the gimmicks to capture attention, not enough time on the quality of the content. And both of those things are uber important. Yeah. So when I was coming up in the ranks, I remember reaching out to folks like Anthony Iannarino, a friend of mine, and Jill Conrath. And I had a chance to be able to have one-on-ones with them and said, listen, guys, this is who I am. This is what my background is. Former VP of sales, 18 years of corporate sales experience. 15 of those 18 years were spent at President's Club or 100% Club. So it wasn't like a flyby type of salesperson or a sales leader. I actually had a track record to prove it. Huh? And I ended up, going after this particular path. And what I wanted to know is how do I become a sales influencer to build this brand? And, everybody gave me all kinds of different tidbits of pieces of advice. And one of the biggest ones that was consistent across every person I spoke to was, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. You have to write a book. And so what I knew for me was, anytime, and I don't know what's wrong with my head, but anytime someone says you have to do something to be able to get something, I'm the type of person that says, no, watch, I'll prove you that I don't have to do this to be able to get that. And I have to figure out what the other thing is, right? And I didn't know. So I came up with this idea of, well, what I'll do is I will be a leader in video content, because not everybody was doing that, and hardly anybody was doing that. And I will also do a podcast. So those are the two things that I decided to do, was to be able to build my thought leadership audibly, because I hate writing. In fact, I just picked up a book. Someone sent me a book for me to read. And I read the first 32 pages, and then I closed it and said, I'm bored. But here's the thing. That's not just their book. It is the 270 books that I have in my cabinet back here. I pick it up and I cannot read past 50 pages, because every book to me is boring. I don't like reading books. I'm a short form type of content guy, right? I read 2,000 blogs per year, and I watch, I don't know, 1,000 videos. It seems like per year, right? So I'm short form. This is what I am, a short form. So I figured, I will create short form video content, and then I will also create long form content, which is my podcast, the Modern Selling Podcast. And that is about 45 to 55 minutes on average per episode. but all of it has to do with me speaking. So my strength, I realized, was not writing, it was speaking. And I could be a better speaker than I am a writer, because writing just takes more time and more energy for me to push out that type of content. So that's what I did is not only is create those gimmicks, those hooks, those thumbnails that are going to bring people in, which are super important. But once someone got in, whether or not there was valuable content inside of there. And that's one of the things I think people are struggle with, especially if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, is you're creating a brand, and you're doing all these things that are that get you the right clicks. Once someone gets into that piece of content, do they say it's a value? Do they recognize the value immediately? Are you telling the story with a story? Are you identifying how this is going to help people? And those are the things that are really missing from a lot of people's content. In fact, funny as it may be, we just did a review. Our focus is all around prospecting for Vengreso, teaching sellers how to be better prospectors through skills-based training. And so we have this article that we are trying to get to page 1, and it's the definitive guide to prospecting. And it is our second longest blog on Vengreso, the Vengreso.com site. We have over 3,000 blogs on there. It is the second longest. It is what I would argue one of my best pieces that I've ever done. And it's sitting on page number 2. And we did a review of all the ones on page number 1. And you could tell on page number 1, all of them, every one of them, were written by some content marketer who was able to actually get the content to rank because they understood how to do SEO really, really well. But there was no depth, no volume, no takeaways that I, as a leader or a rep, can go and implement. It was the scratch the surface type of content that's all sitting on page number 1. But if you look at our definitive guide, I have actually had customers who have picked up the phone or emailed me and said to me, I read the definitive guide, we actually took it, and we started implementing that exact cadence within our SDR and BDR program. And that happened as early as last week when I had a customer, a VP of sales, reach out to me and tell me that. So that having been said, I think what people need to understand is you've got to bring the gimmicks, you've got to bring the catchy things, you've got to bring the things that are going to make you stand out from the crowd. Yes, check the box. But once they get into that content, what do they find? Does it have depth? And is it backed by experience, or at least some data? And maybe it's not your data, maybe it's somebody else's data. So that's what I would say to that. And that was a long answer to your question.
No, I welcome when the guest talks more. One thing I am going to do though is I'm going to put a note for myself to make sure that I leave a link to your definitive guide in the show notes below. But a couple more questions before we finish up. Any listeners who are looking to build a brand, one thing that you may notice yourself doing is typing the same message again and again and again, copying and pasting. The man himself here has the answer for you. Fly message. It is a lifesaver. Can you tell people more about what fly message is and how you can save them hours upon hours of time?
Hey man, I love what you just said, and I might just put your face and your statement here on our website with that social proof. So thanks for being a user of Fly Message as well. So Fly Message, it is a sales messaging text expander tool, and I like to think of it as sales messaging on steroids, or speed writing. Think of it as speed writing. So this was actually developed by sales people, our customers, who kept coming to us and said, man, you've got 28-page playbook with all these different types of scripts in your training program, over 70 different scripts. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. It's beautiful. They work, right? But I don't remember all of these inside there. And I have to come back and I have to copy and paste. It would be great if there was some sort of like online tool that I could just, copy and paste from a template, or I could, use some sort of short code or quick code. So we actually incorporated early on into our training a tool called Auto Text Expander, a free Chrome extension. Now, Auto Text Expander and every text expander tool out there was developed by software engineers. Software, and when you're doing development in code, you reuse code over and over and over and over again, right? And so they have these short codes, if you would. You can type out, 3 letters dash, DIF as an example, and then boom, up pops up the code in your string of content, and away you keep going. So we took that concept and we said, well, what if we could build out sales messaging templates in an online way so that no matter what computer you went to across any Chrome browser, whether you're using it on LinkedIn, Salesforce, HubSpot, Gmail, anywhere online, that you could have access to your templates. And that's essentially what we did. We built FlyMessage, FlyMSG.io, or you can go to Vengreso.com and you can get access to it there. And with that in mind, FlyMessage was really designed by salespeople saying, man, if I could just increase my productivity. Right now, I've got it saved in Word, Google Docs, a draft email. I've got all my scripts in a draft email. Evernote, OneNote, Google Notes, right? All these things that people had. And we've now taken that and consolidated into one place on a Chrome browser that allows you anywhere on the web to build out anything. And so you could use it as a business owner. I use it for whenever I get a message from for financials related, taxes, those types of things. I end up having a short code called dash finance MSG, all one word, all one phrase. And I just type in dash finance MSG, and boom, up pops up 2 sentences to the finance team that is consistent and regular. Hey, Don, can you please make sure that you file this document in the right spot inside of our secure drive, and please address this, confirm when completed. Okay, now that's all I write, right? And so I just type in, 10 letters, boom, 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 and it pops up, hit send. So that's the idea behind FlyMessage, is to increase our productivity. Now in the sales world, we have a template called dash cold template. So if I'm reaching out to you and I'm sending you a cold message, we have a whole entire template that's built out that's really structured around our PVC sales methodology. Or maybe I want to connect with you on LinkedIn and I want to know what's that perfect connection request message. Excuse me. Or maybe I have a message that I use when a customer is stiff arming me and they're not responding to me, right? Maybe I want to be able to have promote a new webinar, and I want to reach out to sales leaders and invite them to be able to join in to this particular webinar. Regardless of the use case, you have the ability to be able to create that piece of content inside of FlyMessage, and with a few short keystrokes, have that message be repeatable and keep popping up over and over and over again. We also built it in when our customers asked us, they said, hey, can you make sure that we can at least bring in attachments, pictures, videos, all those things that can be brought in. And we brought that functionality directly into the freemium version. And I'm really proud of FlyMessage because, boy, the response that we've gotten from the marketplace has been truly amazing, that individuals recognize the need for speed, but at the same time, consistency in the messaging that works. And that's where FlyMessage came to be. So FlyMessage.io, it's available in the Chrome store. Go to Vengreso.com or FlyMessage.io, and you'll bounce directly to the landing page.
I've got 3 questions left. The third last one is, the answer to this might be no, but is there a commonly held belief? Oh, that's Siri. Is there a commonly held belief about your industry that you passionately disagree with?
Well, one of the things that I passionately disagree with is that sales leaders believe that you can hand off a tool like LinkedIn or a video tool from Hippo Video, as an example, or Vidyard or OneMob or any of those things, and you can go forth and be successful. And most of us don't even understand, especially those that are the VP and above. We're 45 and older for VPs and above, generally speaking. And most of us don't even understand what is good or what is bad. Why? Because we never did it. We didn't do it that way. So we truly don't understand what is good versus what is bad. And with that in mind, that is one of the, I would say, commonly held misnomers or beliefs, is that I can, the millennials that are out there, oh, they know how to LinkedIn. The folks in my sales organization, they've been doing LinkedIn their whole life, right? But if you look at their individual profiles, guess what? When a buyer goes back to that profile because they engaged with them somehow through social media, 72% at a minimum, 72% are going to click back on that seller's profile. And what do they find? What they find is quota crushing sales rep, all-time President's Club earner, seasoned executive, knowledgeable in whatever it might be. Really? So you think your sellers know how to use LinkedIn when they're using it in a sales environment? Though that messaging that I just repeated is the messaging that you would have if you're looking for a job. So what does that mean when a buyer comes back to your seller's profile? Just using that as the simple example, it means that your buyer thinks that the seller who's calling on them is also looking for a job. And so that's what I say is that I think the misnomer is that we can give technology to our sellers and say, go forth and be successful. The other misnomer that's tied to that is, oh, I can get my social media manager and get them to train my sales guys. Yeah, right. When was the last time you walked into a sales training program and the trainer did not provide his or her credentials on why they are standing in front of the room? So do you think that our sellers of any age, 25 and older, even take the older guys like us, 45 and older, that we're going to stand and sit there or sit and listen to a social media manager, the 28-year-old social media manager, by the way, no offense, because I also do social media as well, but have them tell us what we're supposed to do the right way to be able to hit our quota when they have never carried a bag? No, you're smoking. And that's the thing that I would say is those misnomers there are single-handedly the areas that sales leaders forget of what to do and how to do what is right. Case in point, when we were growing up and learning how to cold call, we sat in a cube next to somebody else and we put the Y connector on and the headpiece on and we listened to them make calls. We did that for a week and we'd go from rep to rep to rep to learn style, methodology, process, what they did, right? Then we'd flip it around. We were now asked to make those same cold calls, and guess who plugged up to our Y connector? Our manager. And then he or she would coach us through the process, what you said, how you said it, those types of things. And then they would unplug after another week and you're on your own. So we went through an intensive 60 plus hours worth of training on how to cold call. And now with sales, we've taken new mediums to create outreach, LinkedIn, video, text, email, direct mail. And we just gave our reps a tool and said, go forth and be successful. We actually never gave them the 60 hours worth of training that they got when we were cold calling. That is a travesty. And that is a huge mistake that I think sales leaders are making.
Hang on. And I'd never thought about the whole quota carrying kind of references that, even if they don't want to admit it, it's kind of a way of advertising themselves.
100%.
But the second last question is, all your loved ones are safe, but your house is burning down and you can only save one item. What one item is that going to be?
From my house? Oh my gosh. I'll tell you what it'd be. It'd be one photo album. And the photo album is of my son's baby pictures because I didn't buy the digital copies for that album. Everything else in my life, honest to goodness, pretty much almost everything else in my life is digital. So I could literally, the whole entire house could burn down today. I can get a brand new computer within 24 hours and be back up and running with no problem. All I do is hit on, log on to all my little connections, to Dropbox, to Google, to everything else, and I'm back up and running. My life has not been hurt. So I would probably say that photo album is probably the only thing that is not digitized, excuse me.
I'd like you to imagine that we're now talking as if it's the year 2030. So we're in the year 2030 and you're looking back on the last decade. You can answer this personally or professionally, but what would you like to be looking back on?
That I made it personally, that I ended up making a decision to move to Hawaii, and that I made a decision to move to Latin America. and to also move to Southeast Asia. And that decision was an awesome decision from an experience perspective for my boys. So that's one of our goals, and that's one of our missions in life. And I think we're going to hit that starting this year, as a matter of fact, because I just refinanced my house at the crazy super low interest rates, the 2 point, something it is. And that now affords me the opportunity to be able to rent out my house and not be underwater. But I definitely have always wanted to give my boys that experience of living in different countries and areas, not only to be able to experience what it was like to travel, but also to experience culture and seeing what it is that we may not see here in the domestic U.S. And my boys, I grew up in a very poor background. My boys, fortunately, are not having to have the same challenges that I saw as growing up. But it doesn't mean that it didn't shape me for the person that I am today. And those are the things that I want my children to see, because that's how you become a more compassionate individual, in my opinion.
Amazing. I actually love that answer. Mario Martinez, I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you a little more over the last 35 minutes. I wish you and your two boys and your wife nothing but the best going forward, wherever the hell you end up in the future. But from me, thank you for being my guest today.
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I super enjoyed it, and great questions, by the way.